administrator for today's presentation. I will be taking your questions throughout the broadcast using the questions feature in our toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen. Please note that this is the only way to interact with us, as all of our attendees will be on mute. If time permits, at the end of the webinar, we're going to give Kyle an opportunity to respond to questions at the end of the presentation. This presentation, as are all of FAIR's webinars, will be recorded and posted on the FAIR website in about 7 to 10 days. I'd like at this time to introduce our presenter for today, which, Kyle, if you don't mind. Great, thank you. Kyle Dine is a trusted food allergy educator and musician who performs allergy awareness assemblies across North America. He educates students in elementary schools about allergies, anaphylaxis, and what they can do to help maintain an allergy-safe school environment. He has multiple food allergies himself, and he has worked with Food Allergy Canada since 2008. In December 2014, he successfully crowdfunded a food allergy awareness video for elementary schools entitled Kyle Dine and Friends, Allergy Awareness with Music, Puppets, and Games. He's also the founder of allergytranslation.com, which is a website that provides translation cards for allergic travelers. And at this time, I am going to stop my talking and turn the presentation over to Kyle.
Well, thanks so much, Lynn. Welcome, everybody. Today's webinar is titled, If I Only Knew Then What I Know Now. So words of wisdom from me, allergy tips specifically for teens. And if you are a teen listening to this, well, kudos to you. I'm impressed. As you know, this will be longer than a YouTube video. And if you're a parent, welcome to you too. And I hope that you can pass along these tips to your teen. So Lynn gave me a really nice introduction, and I won't cover much more, but I've worked in the food allergy awareness and education realm for the last 8 years, mostly with Food Allergy Canada, also traveling around, going to over 600 schools, performing assemblies for children. I also have allergies myself to peanuts, tree nuts, eggs, fish, shellfish, mustard, and penicillin, plus asthma and eczema too. And I've had all of those since I was a toddler. So I've gone through many, many stages and have lots of stories to share with you today. Here's what's on the menu today. It's really, I'm going to talk a little bit about teens and risk-taking in general. My teenage years were some of the lessons that I learned looking back. I'll get into my top 10 tips for teenagers. And then a couple tips for parents too, because I have a hunch there's a couple listening to this today. And we'll get into Q&A at the very end. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions. So here's no big surprise. Teens can take risks. But I'm going to dive a little bit into the research behind specific risk-taking with respect to food allergies. You know, if you're a teen, you've probably heard the expression from your parents many times, you should know better. We've all heard that, and why don't teens know better? And mainly, it's the teenage brain, in that it is a work in progress. It's not fully mature until your mid-20s. And the frontal cortex, just getting into a little science here, it is the area of sober second thought, and it is the part that is last to mature. And that's the part that's essential in judgment, decision-making, impulse control. So the next time that your parents ask you, why don't you know better, you know, you should know better, but you could always give them a really great excuse and say, well, my frontal cortex is just not fully developed yet. So up to you, but one of the big key things is parental involvement can have a really great protective effect on this. So staying involved, open lines of communication, and staying involved as a parent. This is a very interesting study that dived into food allergy management with respect to carrying your epinephrine. So out of 174 teens and young adults, 87% had epinephrine with them. 61% reported always carrying epinephrine, and we know how important it is to always have it. So that's less than 2/3. What's really interesting is that the frequency of these teens that carried epinephrine, the different activities, it actually started varying, and from traveling down to restaurants to being at a friend's home, carrying a school dance, wearing tight clothes, and going to sports or playing sports. And what's really interesting is that if you look at it in terms of risk perception, all of these, as you go down the list, there's more social activities. So that definitely has a role to play. So obviously we know we should always be carrying epinephrine, and those are risks that we're taking. I'll dive a little bit more into that later. In part of this study, 42% would eat a food labeled may contain. I'm going to give you some stories later on about when I ate may contain, and what happened to me, which was very unfortunate, and why I don't know. 68% believe that education of their friends would make life with a food allergy easier. But here's an interesting point. Only 60% of them actually tell their friends about their allergies. So I give a lot of credit to FAIR for giving so many great resources to schools, and I know there's a lot of great training going on to teachers, but one of the areas I love to see progress on is getting information to teens directly and to classmates of those with food allergies. That's a big passion of mine. This is a really neat study where they looked at causes of reactions, and they had a group of teens that told candidly why they had their reaction. 31% did not ask or check the ingredients. 31% just didn't know that they were allergic to that food, and obviously that can happen with a new allergy. 25%, it was an unexpected ingredient and usually a safe food, so it's making that assumption that it should have been safe. And then 6%, it was cross-contamination of the food. So really the main connection here is that making assumptions about what you're eating. And that's one of the things that as a teen I remember I did, and it can definitely have dire consequences. So very important to be 100% sure about what's in the food we eat. In terms of food labeling risks with teens, if a food says may contain your allergen, what do? 24% said they don't eat it. 24% try a little bit and then wait and see if you have a reaction. 18% eat it because the chance of it actually containing the allergen is very low. And 18% eat it because I ate it before and I didn't have a reaction. So it's almost reasoning with yourself on the safety of a product when really you're not 100% sure. I'm guilty of that in the past, and after eating a may contain product over 10 years ago, I had a very serious reaction and sent me to the hospital, and it's something I just do not take the risk with. It's not worth it for me. There's lots of other foods and lots of other substitutes, so it's not a big deal for me. In terms of transitional risks, yeah, how difficult is it going from elementary school where a lot of things are taken care of for you, your teacher knows about your allergies, there's strategies in place. You go on to middle school where not so much. It's, there's still a lot of policies in place, but then when you get on to high school, it might feel like you're a lot more on your own. I hear teens reporting that sometimes they don't know if their teachers know that they have food allergies. So different environments and ultimately getting a little less control, and you're getting more responsibility yourself. There's new friends throughout the process and new issues, especially that desire to just fit in and be normal. New situations, and I empathize with you because how are you supposed to know how to handle it all? It's a lot of new situations that you're dealing with. What do you say to this person when they give you a hard time? What do you do in this situation when you feel pressured to eat a food that someone's giving you? It's not easy. Parents, this is why it's really important that you help prepare them in advance and reinforce the self-reliance management through really open communication, but also trying to prepare these situations in advance and how to appropriately respond to them so kids, teens will know what to do when those situations present themselves. And what makes it even harder, and if you are a teen listening to this, you know exactly what I'm talking about with anxiety. Reactions can definitely be scary. If you've had an anaphylactic reaction, you know how quick and how severe they can be. Bullying is another issue that's very unfortunate. I know FAIR has done a fabulous PSA about it. Cyberbullying is another common issue that a lot of us deal with. Peer pressure, exclusion, one of the things that really gets me. And then a very complicated relationship with food. You know, when people look at food on a menu, generally they see, oh, that must be delicious. I'll get that. You know, when we see food on a menu, it's almost knocking off. I can't eat that. I know I can't eat that. That's a no-go. What on earth can I have? So definitely an interesting relationship we have with food. And one of the things I hear most from teens is that feeling like a burden to others, that their allergies have somehow made them feel like a burden because of accommodations that were put in place, that they're just it's too hard for others to deal with. So, you know, all of these things, they're huge issues, and it gets into the psychosocial element of having food allergies. It's not just avoiding the food, it's dealing with life all around it, and there's no easy way to deal with these problems, but in the tips I'll be giving later, I'm going to definitely be addressing these, because at the end of the day, we don't want to be discreet about having food allergies and taking more risks. All right, it's time to get into the fun stuff, my teenage years. So I'm going to try to tell some censored stories, but yeah, when I was a teen, I had a pretty good time. I loved playing sports. I was in a rock band playing guitar. I took some risks with my allergies too, and I'll get into that, but not always. You know, when I was a preteen, I can't even believe I'm showing you this, but this is a picture of me, I don't know, I think 11 or 12 years old, allergic and cool, because I thought I was. I had the cool hat with the cool polarized shades. I had my favorite hockey team on my shirt, the Timex Indiglo watch, way before the iWatch. I had my medical ID on. I had my fanny pack, which, hey, this is the 80s, early 90s. Fanny packs were pretty cool. And, yep, the horse was pretty envious in the background there. But I'm just having fun, but showing that, you know, at that time, I was very compliant. I had 2 of my epinephrine auto-injectors in that pouch. I had my medical ID on. I had it all with me every single day. And it was really no biggie. It was just a part of me. But then things started to slide a bit. And as I went through my teenage years, I think it's easiest to say I thought I had things under control. I didn't really commonly disclose my food allergies to others. I took risks with my food, and unfortunately it resulted in many reactions, mostly minor, but a lot of scary situations. I didn't have epinephrine with me at all times, thinking that, you know, that same thing I was talking about before, reasoning with myself, like, oh, I won't have a reaction today, I shouldn't need it. Whoever expects to have a reaction? They're always a surprise, so that's why you always need to have it with you. So really, I did not have things under control, although I thought I did. And then the biggie, and it still shakes me to think about what happened to me on Christmas Day of all days back in 2005, where someone I knew and trusted gave me food, and my gut told me I've never had that before, but this is someone I know, it should be okay. I didn't ask any questions about it. I just ate it. It was a brownie. And obviously, if you're dealing with my allergies, peanuts, tree nuts, nuts, eggs, you'd be thinking brownies is a no-go, but I ate it. And it was very quick what happened after that. Within about 1 minute, I was having trouble breathing. Within 2 to 3 minutes, I really could not breathe at all. And I just remember sitting back, and I almost felt like I was watching the scene on television where my family was frantic, calling 911, trying to find my epinephrine, and it wasn't right with me. It was unfortunately in our car. That's where I left it. And what's more unfortunate is that it was expired. This is me as a teenager, and I was lucky, so incredibly lucky that epinephrine worked, that the ambulance came, that we all responded, and the reaction, we had it under control. After it did take a turn for a biphasic reaction, meaning that it came back at the emergency room, which is why it's so important to get to the hospital. But that was the biggie for me. That was the reason that I stepped back and said, Kyle, stop being an idiot. you need to do a better job staying safe, managing your allergies, because believe me, I would never, ever want to go through that experience again. It was that scary to not be able to breathe, to see your family panicking. So it was the big slap in the face that I needed, and that's what really put me on the road I am today. Not only just with my work, but how I manage my allergies. And here's me today as an adult. I don't let them slow me down. There's me and my hockey team. I'm a hockey player. I love hiking, outdoor stuff, canoeing. And I love traveling. And that picture of me traveling, that's actually in Shanghai, China. And I never thought I would actually go to that part of the world because of my allergies. And I felt so much in control. I could do it, packing my own food and research and all that. I made it happen, and it was a great trip. So staying safe for me now is second nature. And I have to tell you, it feels good to be in control. I don't feel like a burden to anybody, and I feel good about that. So, enough about me. Let's get into some tips for teens. And I have a top 10 list that I'm going to go over. And really, these are those tips of if I knew then what I know now, just from a lot of life experiences. And these tips will not only make you safer, but living with allergies will just be easier in the long run. When you're an adult someday, this will all be second nature, and you won't be learning on the fly after a severe reaction like I did. Tip number 1, and most important, always carry epinephrine. It can save your life, and you know it, and I know it. I know it firsthand because it saved my life. I'm forever grateful to the companies that make epinephrine auto-injectors because they're quick, they're fast, and it worked. And for that, it is so important. We know how severe allergies are. We can't deny it, so it's really important that we do carry it. And whether it's in a backpack, a purse, your pocket, just bring it. Have it with you. Make sure it is secure. I have gone to parties before where it was in my jacket, and when I got my jacket at the end of the night, it wasn't there anymore. It fell out of the pocket. So important to have it in a secure spot. Simple rule, no epinephrine, no food. If you do forget it, and hey, we're all human, and the accidents happen, and sometimes we hear of tragedies too where epinephrine was not readily available, and there's a human factor of all this. Sometimes we changed our bag and it was in another bag or purse. But here's the thing, if you do forget it and you realize it, you need to go back and get it. And it is a viable solution for being late. Don't abuse it where you're late every day, but it's really important you always have it with you. And for me, I have a system myself to remember. I call it the triple pat, where I'm always doing 3 pats on my pocket. 1 is for my wallet, 1 is for my phone, and the other one is for my epinephrine. So maybe you have a good spot in your house. You'll never forget it before you leave. Do what you need to do to make sure you always have it with you, please. And don't be afraid to use it. And we hear so much, it's easy, you can do it, but hey, in the heat of the moment, it's not easy to do it because you know that you're going to be having emergency services come, it's an ambulance ride, all of this stuff, but guess what? You need to use it. Studies show that using epinephrine early is that crucial factor in saving your life. So I can tell you, it barely even hurts. It's like a little pinch. So it's not the pain that you should be afraid of at all. So don't be afraid at all to use it. Tip number 2, take ingredient lists seriously. They are not part of the whole marketing on the label. It's very serious information. May contain, and you can make a lot of reasoning for why it might not. But if only one product out of 100 may contain and actually contain enough to elicit a reaction, I'm going to avoid that one time. I don't want a reaction. So it's really important that if you're uncertain, call the manufacturer and ask them what is the real risk here and get the information. some things change. Product ingredients change from new manufacturing plants and their processes, even across borders. I'm from Canada, and I know some companies can eat chocolates in America, but not in Canada, and vice versa. And also at restaurants, the recipes can change as well. Sometimes they get different suppliers for food. So if you eat it once, will it always be okay? Not necessarily. It's really important that you always check. So moving on to tip number 3, allergens can be where you least expect them. And I think we all have a story about that one time that allergen of yours appeared in something you had no clue that it would be in. It's really important that you don't make assumptions about the food that we eat. I remember the only time, the craziest one lately for me, was when I was actually in China. I ordered a tea, a milk tea it was called, and I was about to drink this tea, and I thought, what's tea? It's usually just some herbs and water. I opened the lid, put a spoon in, and at the bottom was just a big, probably inch of crushed up almonds at the bottom of the tea. So it's so important you don't make assumptions, that for me, I eat a hamburger, it's second nature. I look under the bun after I've asked all the questions, obviously, but it's really making sure that your food is safe. Sauces, they look similar, they're not created equal. For me, I had an experience where I almost ate a dip where I swore it smelled like sour cream, but it was actually mayonnaise, which has egg. And also, we also have to look at things that aren't just food, but cross-contamination. When you're sharing a drink with somebody, a cup, whether it's alcohol or anything else, there might be protein on that. Passing a cigarette or a joint, and eating, I hate to go through this, but eating pop brownies, things like this, where peer pressure is at an absolute max, and you're given a situation where your friends are telling you to do something, and you think it's going to be cool and you'll be part of the group, but don't forget the risk, and those messages, deep down, those are ingrained in you, and you do have the strength just to say no. And that's really important, because what could be worse than a reaction? Well, being high or drunk and having a reaction. And then with cross contact, buffets, and making after-school snacks at your friend's house. It's not your kitchen. There might be different allergens around. These are the things that you have to be a little bit more aware about, and just have your backup a little bit more. Buffets are something that, cross-contamination can be all over the place, cross-contact with shared spoons and all that. So be cautious or avoid altogether. Tip number 4. And if you're watching this with your parents, teens, you have my permission to ask them to leave the room for just 2 minutes. They can watch this on the recording later. But the risks of intimacy are something that need to be covered. And I'll push forward here. Kissing, and it's human nature, but there is a risk. Studies have shown that peanut proteins, and allergen proteins can be in saliva. So, yeah, absolutely there is a risk, and you can reduce that risk by either waiting an extended period of time before kissing, brushing teeth after your partner eats the allergens, but what I find is best is avoiding the allergen altogether. It happened to me, unfortunately, with a girlfriend where it was a morning smooch and my lips started swelling and I had no clue what was going on. And after asking, what did you have today for breakfast? She had eggs, and that was all it took. So it is a real thing, and I should have told her more about the severity of my allergies first, and that's what it's all about. Communicate first, not during, because nothing ruins a mood like coming in for a kiss, smelling peanuts on someone's breath, and having to put up a shield all of a sudden. I don't think so. So tell them way before that awkward moment. And there's ways to do it. I always find humor works well. I once used the line, I'm thinking of getting peanut-free zone tattooed on my tongue. But you don't want to freak them out. You don't want to scare them. And you want to let them know that this is something I deal with, but it's manageable. And as long as you help me out, it's really not a big deal. So you don't need to freak out about it. Can definitely be more than kissing, and there's been reports where bodily fluid, semen can transfer allergens. This is getting on a whole another level, and there's not much research being done. And that research, well, that's an interesting subject in itself. But here's the thing. The most important thing to remember is that one of the best strategies is just having your partner avoid your allergen. And if they're unwilling to do that, if they're unwilling to give up something that you are severely allergic to, then maybe that's a sign that they're not giving you the support and care that you would need as a partner. So it might be a little flag in the beginning of the relationship. But from all the people I've heard, I've only really heard many positive things, that people just want to help. Partners and girlfriends and boyfriends, they're supportive. We all have something with health or whatever, and people generally are kind and want to help, and it's not a big deal. Tip number 5, parents, you can come back in the room. So don't keep it a secret. And don't keep what a secret? I'm sure teens, you have a couple of secrets, but here's what I ask of you. 1, don't keep your food allergies a secret from friends, from people that you hang around with often, teammates. These are the people that can help you if you have an allergic reaction. They can also be your support. If you go to a restaurant with your full team and they all know that you have food allergies, it's not that big of a deal when all of a sudden you ask the waiter, you pull them aside and say, hey, I'm allergic to this and this. Do you have any recommendations? It's a lot harder when no one knows your allergies and all of a sudden you're doing something different from the rest. So it's easier just to tell people. It really is. Get them on board, and then they've got your back. And especially if you're having an allergic reaction. One of the things that, as parents, you probably hear, the thing that teens will sometimes go off alone. And teens, you probably, if you have had a reaction, you might feel this inclination that, oh my goodness, I'm starting to look all weird, my lips are swelling up, I'm feeling awful, I should go run, hide, and try to make myself feel better. I don't want to cause a scene. Don't do that. The worst thing you can do is isolate yourself, where people don't know where you are, they don't know what's happening. So what I always remember is try to put yourself in the shoes of your friends. If your friend had, let's say, epilepsy, and you didn't know about it, and one day they had a seizure, you would be guessing what on earth is going on, and you really wouldn't be prepared to help. You would just not know. So if your friends know, think about how they would feel if you had a reaction and you didn't tell them. I would want to know if my friend had a reaction. I would be right there for them. That's what friends are for, to help and support each other. So never feel like you're a burden. Never keep it a secret, your reaction, and keep it to yourself. Tip number 6. We're cruising right along here. Wear medical ID. And very, very important. And I bet there's some of you that say, I used to wear it when I was a kid, but I can communicate my allergies now. And, I used to have a button that said, stop, please don't feed me, when I was a kid. I don't wear that now, but I do wear my medical ID. It's really important to me because I know, how am I going to communicate if I do have an allergic reaction when I'm traveling? I'm often alone when I'm traveling around doing shows across the continent. So for me, I would like to have someone at least know what's going on. And medical IDs are very well recognized. Paramedics are trained to look for them, and people are aware of them. So if you're showing signs or symptoms, someone can see and help. There's many cool options available. I rotate now between a dog tag necklace and this leather cuff that you see on the screen. So there's some really cool ones. And I also have this paracord one too. It's my newest one. So I kind of collect them, but there's some funky designs out there. And it's a conversation starter. A lot of people will see them and ask you, hey, what's that? And it's really not a big deal when you own your allergies. Tip number 7, and I love this graphic. Proving you're responsible. And why is this so important to prove you're responsible? And it's not easy to manage allergies on your own after your parents have done so much to keep you safe all of your life. But why is it important? Well, it's to get your parents finally off your back. They have been a great help, but you need to start taking charge of your own allergies. When you're on a date, do you want your mom and dad at the next table making sure you ask all the right questions? No. So you got to prove this. You got to prove that you are responsible. So how do you do this? How do you gain their trust while earning your freedom? Well, be proactive. Here's some tips that you can do to just show them, Mom, Dad, I got this. I'm starting to feel better with my allergies. I know how to protect myself by always carrying epinephrine and letting them know that you've got it. Wearing a medical ID consistently. Offer to help them with meal planning and say, next week I would love to do a meal, an allergy-friendly meal. I've done some research online about some really cool substitutes for my allergens. That's pretty impressive. Do research for an upcoming trip, a family trip, or even just a school trip, where right when the notice comes home, you bring it to your parents and say, oh, look, our class is going here. And I was thinking I could make a suggestion to the teacher for where we'd go or what we'd do for lunch. Those are the proactive things you can do where your parents were going to step back and say, uh-huh, you're starting to get it. And also, one that's really, really important, and I bet maybe your parents don't even know, but here's a little insider tip you can really impress them. Take a look at your epinephrine auto-injector. Look at the expiry date. They might not know the exact date, and you can tell them, hey, Mom, Dad, I noticed that my epinephrine expires April 24th. When do you think I should get a new one? I was thinking maybe in March, just to be safe. So there's your insider tip to really impress them. Look at the expiration date today and always have in-date epinephrine with you. Tip number 8, owning your allergies. Now, this is one of my favorite tips of all because this is what it's all about as you get older, is taking control of your allergies fully. And you probably remember a time where you felt so uncomfortable because someone was telling your allergic reaction story, something that happened to you, and you know what? It's not your voice telling the story. So it's taking ownership of your allergies, your story, your voice. You say it like you want others to hear it. And that includes not only just your past reactions, but how you want others to treat you with your allergies. They are only a small part of you. They do not define you. And if you do have friends that are critical about your food allergies, well, it's maybe a time that you look at, is this person a really great friend? And do I have a voice in that friendship? Because this is something I deal with, and I'm okay with it. I have allergies, just like you have glasses, and we deal with these things. So it's no big deal. It's not a weakness. Own your tone, and this might be one of my favorite tips of all, in that it's really, really easy to work with people, to get them on your side, not against them. So to give you an example, when I go into a restaurant, for me to own my allergies and make sure I get a safe meal, I don't say to the waitress, hey, I'm allergic to peanuts, and you better get me a meal that doesn't have peanuts or else I might sue. That's not my tone. My tone is very friendly. It's, hey, I've got a peanut allergy, and I'm looking at this appetizer. It looks good, but I need to make sure if it's free of my allergen, if there's cross-contact going on in the kitchen, and we can do this. And one of my favorite stories, I had a waitress come back to me. She shook my hand after I asked about chicken wings, and she said, Kyle, my name is Rachel. And as we shook hands, she said, I'm going to make sure you can eat something delicious tonight. And then I just started howling. I thought that was so funny, but she took it that seriously. So own your tone, how you want others to accommodate you. It really helps you when you have a tone that's willing to work with them. And really, you're all getting more into the real world every day, where self-management can get you through any situation, where making sure that you have your epinephrine, that you're asking about ingredients, you're not taking chances with food, this is really important because as you grow up, you're just going to get more and more of these real-world experiences where you might not have the same protections you did in elementary school. So really important, you know how to stay safe in any situation, whether it's traveling, restaurants, you name it. And that's what it's all about, is learning those things now as a teen. Tip number 9 is be a leader, not a victim. And what exactly does that mean? Well, the thing that you can do to best own your allergies, well, it's to get empowered. And by getting empowered, you can also educate others. When you are that confident about having allergies, that they're a part of me and it's no big deal, I do this, this, and this, I stay safe, it's second nature, then you're at a point where you're in really great shape. And you can empower yourself even further by educating others in so many ways, and that just feels really, really cool when you can do things like joining TAG, which is Fair's group of teens, and they earn volunteer hours for high school. It looks fantastic on a resume. When you're talking to a restaurant manager, if you notice this place could do a lot better for people with allergies, why don't you make a complaint or talk to the manager and make some suggestions, some proactive suggestions what they could do. It might increase their client base. Call a manufacturer. Tell them why you're disappointed that an ingredient list changed, or ask why there is a may contain label on their product. Write a politician. These two girls on the very bottom, they wrote a politician, I believe in New Hampshire, and they were just complaining that it's really hard for us to dine out at restaurants. And what happened? Well, that simple letter that reached a senator, it spawned a complete new law for food service and restaurants to make it safer for people with food allergies. Those two girls did it just by writing a letter. Isn't that incredible on a resume? I changed policy. Make a presentation for an elementary school, for a club. Make a school club at your high school or university. These are popping up all over the place. Fair is a great spot to go to for these type of resources of what you could actually present at these meetings and what info you could give. Create a YouTube video. This one in the middle, I love. This girl draws these pictures about life living gluten-free or without wheat. So that's very cute and has thousands and thousands of hits because people want to learn more, and that's a fun way to learn. Or you could write a song and join my band. But whatever you do, it takes it to another level when you're actually being a leader with your allergies, and you're helping not only yourself but other people, and whether it's people without allergies or young children that have allergies, and they're looking up to you as the big kid, as the one that I want to be like that when I grow up. So you have a lot of power to do that. And then my last tip is stay positive. And this is really important to me. It is very easy to get frustrated. For me, it's when I deal with exclusion. I get very frustrated when people think, oh, we can't make this happen because of allergies, let's not invite Kyle. I don't like that. And I also don't like ignorance, when people just refuse to learn about allergies or say, they weren't a thing when I was a kid, so they're not a thing now. So it's okay. We get frustrated. It happens. But you know what? You have to keep things in perspective. For me, I can do anything. I travel the world. I play music. I have sports. I got friends. All these things. I have some foods I can't eat. It's manageable. I avoid them. I eat other delicious food. That's it. End of story. I'm okay with it. So not the end of the world for me. Allergies can be a strength, not a weakness. It does build character, just like eating your spinach. But things like resilience, responsibility, these are things that you gain at a young age through having allergies, and that's not a bad thing. I always remind myself that I'm the expert about something. And sometimes you're in situations, whether you're with a teacher or a coach, and you hear wrong information about allergies, you're an expert. And if someone tells you something, well, you can feel free not to say anything. It would be great if you could educate them, but at the end of the day, know that you're right, trust your gut, and don't feel pressured by anyone to do something that you're not comfortable with when it comes to food or your allergens. Master the workarounds. Have your own food handy. For me, it is granola bars. I've got about 100 in storage at all times, ready to be dispensed. Stick to the basics. So, when you're at a restaurant, when you're traveling to China or anywhere across the world, it's not a time to get too experimental, to get too adventurous with food. So stick to the things you know. Having snappy comebacks ready goes a long way too. People always ask me, I don't know why this question, it's such a stupid question. What would happen if I dangled a peanut in front of your face? And maybe you've had this stupid question too, and I always come back to them with, what would happen if I dangled a piano over your head? And they say, oh, well, touche. So, having a couple of comebacks, I use a lot of humor with my allergies, and that kind of comes across well when communicating. And lastly, remember, it is just food. It's just food. It's just nutrients. It keeps our bodies going. Life is way more than food. So that I keep that in perspective, that I get to do all of these other things. And when I go traveling, see museums, meet people, all these other things, I really don't care about the food. So a lot of people are foodies, and that's fantastic. I'm more of a lifey. I love other things in life, and food is just kind of secondary. Parents, in case you're out there as well listening, I've got a couple tips for you. Teens, stay with me here because we're going to have some Q&A at the very end, but a couple quick tips for parents. The teen years, obviously, there's going to be new situations, new risk, unclear management strategies. What's going to go on in the high school environment? Unsure about what's going to be the emergency response on campus. It's an opportunity for you to understand that there's going to be some things that you might not be able to control, but it's so important to reinforce those non-negotiables. Things like always carrying epinephrine, telling your friends, not taking a risk, reading ingredient lists, all of the things that we've covered today, these constantly need to be reinforced. And my mom is fantastic still to this day at asking me about how often I carry my epinephrine, and it's always. So it never ends. But maybe you could tone it down at times if you're getting called a nag. But don't take it all on yourself. Help your kids own it. Encourage them to call the manufacturer. Give them a voice at a restaurant. Don't order their food. Ask the questions for them. Guide them. So very, very important. And the top 4 tips for parents very quickly. Connect, open lines of communication, very important, early and often. Guide them, not doing everything for them, and helping them take smart risks. It's obvious teens will take risks, but guide them to make smart ones, where wearing seatbelts, wearing helmets, saying no to different situations, that you can really have an effect on. Support and their requests for accommodation. It might be different than what was going on in the past, but maybe they feel more responsible and they don't need that certain type of accommodation. And that's something that you can respect, but work towards that with them. And supporting their independence, because, hey, that's what all teens want, and it's helping them get there. And lastly, letting go. Not an easy thing, but as you get older, it's important to just acknowledge. And teens need encouragement for the things they do right. Patience, working together, again, all of these things kind of go into just being involved constantly with your child and helping them grow. And here's a very easy chart of the ability to self-manage, and as a child grows, that percentage of their own responsibility grows with them. At the end of the day, by the time they're out of college and in the workforce and there's life, you want them to be managing fully 100% on their own. I would feel awful calling my mom about ingredients every day. So you need to get to that point. So it's that gradual shifting of responsibilities. In terms of additional resources, FAIR has some fantastic stuff, including all of these webinars they do on a monthly basis. They have them on archive, and this one will be on archive. Their teen advisory group, which is a great chance for teens to share their knowledge, expertise, tips through essays or other things and articles, their blogs. So very cool. They have a Facebook support group too. And their annual Teen Summit, I've been to this. It is awesome. They had it last weekend. They set a Guinness World Record. It's fantastic. working with Food Allergy Canada, I've worked directly with their teen program for 8 years now, and the one thing I'm most excited about from them lately is the Ultimate Guidebook for Teens with Food Allergies. It is a very comprehensive book that covers everything from partying, dating, being confident with allergies, anxiety, frustration, you name it. It's a long one, but a good one, and it's right now as an ebook. If you go on Amazon.com or whatever your e-reader is, just search up Food Allergy Canada, you'll find it. Also epinephrine, epipen.com, avq.com. There has been a recall lately. Hopefully you are aware of this. We can get more information on their website. And I really encourage you to look at takethekitcampaign.co.uk, or just look at the hashtag on Twitter, Take the Kit. There is a very, very impressive video that the anaphylaxis campaign in the UK made specifically at teens and young adults. It's a bit of an eye-opener, the video. It can be scary, but sometimes that's exactly what we need to see, is how severe and quick things can progress in a reaction. So great resource. Medical ID, medicalert.org is a great one, and also Lawrence Hope is another one, but there's some great options out there. With that being said, we are now at the point for Q&A. So I'm sure some chat questions have come in throughout the webinar, but I think we're still taking them throughout the duration. So feel free to still use that chat box, and I'll give you some contact information before we even start, in case I forget. But if we run out of time, you can catch me on Twitter and ask more questions at Kyle Dine. My website, there's a contact form where you can get in touch directly. And then on Facebook, I have lots of great allergy information that I share, and allergy-friendly music and all that, and Instagram and all that stuff. So feel free to get in touch. If I didn't address something today, I'd be happy to try to get to it at another day. So Lynn, maybe you can pop back on, and we can tackle some questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kyle. And we have indeed gotten some questions during the presentation. So I'm going to try and get to as many as we possibly can. One of the questions that came through in light of the AviQ recall that you had just mentioned was related to suggestions on how teen boys can carry EpiPens now that that is not really an option for them. So now teens are sort of looking for options for how to discreetly carry around their EpiPen as their auto-injector at this point.
Yeah, great question, and it's something that was for me personally. I really enjoyed carrying that one. I've carried both EpiPen and AviQ, but one of the big pros of AviQ was the small size of it. So with EpiPen. And this is one that now I'm carrying as well with the recall. You know what? There's so many different ways for a boy to carry it, and girls, there's some obvious ways with purses, but boys, I know a lot that just carry it in their pocket, and sometimes that's not ideal. It's kind of bulky. Backpack can be a great spot. There's a lot of waist pouches. I know, especially for older teens, they kind of don't want that thing around their belt at all times. But it is a great spot where you won't forget it. There's a great product called the Leg Buddy. If you Google that, it is something that you strap on your leg, and an EpiPen goes inside that. So that's pretty nifty. And I've carried mine on my leg like that before. And also, I'm a big fan of cargo shorts and cargo pants where there's that nice pocket right on the side. But there's it's whatever your son or daughter is comfortable with. The most important thing is that they have it with them at all times. So hopefully that addresses that question.
Great, thank you, Kyle. Another question was related to allergy anxiety. It's a little bit unclear whether it's a question from a teen or a parent, but general advice for a teen who worries a lot about their food allergies.
Yeah, and I think anxiety is a webinar we could have just that being the sole subject, because it is a big issue, especially the issue of panic attacks and how similar they can resemble an actual allergic reaction. I had an episode where I had Coca-Cola go down the wrong pipe, and I got all worked up thinking my throat feels weird. This could be a reaction. No, it's not. It is. And I got worked up to the point where I had a full-scale panic attack, and it felt like an allergic reaction. I was faint. I was dizzy. I almost collapsed. And all of these things were, they play havoc with your mind. I became a little bit more anxious after that, and I was at a restaurant, and I kind of was starting to second guess myself. Did I ask all the right questions? And I think to take it back to the question of how can you, deal with anxiety, for me it was having that, I almost started again with having that small circle of comfort where I went to the restaurants I knew, I ate the products I knew 100%. I wasn't adventurous in any way, and I really slowly expanded my circle, especially after my very severe biggie reaction. And I found just over time, it's not an overnight solution to anxiety, but over time, the more that you practice in safe environments, these great tips that you can do to keep yourself safe, the more you're going to feel in control and confident about your allergies, and subsequently lower the anxiety.
Great, thank you. Another question came through about this sort of transition into college, and what advice you might have for college-age students who are interested in eating on campus.
Yeah, and first I'll give a plug to FAIR's college program. There's some great resources on that site. But here's the thing, college, university, it's a bit almost like the Wild West at times, where you don't know what you're going to get. And there's more and more information out there about what campuses are doing to keep students safe. So really, when you are applying for college, do your research. Talk to a student who's been there, especially an allergic student. Talk to, if you can, cafeteria manager, and find out what the meal plan's like. Are there safe options? Is there labeling? Inquire about campus security. Do they carry epinephrine with them? What's the health services like on campus? Are there food service establishments there where they sell, it's not a cafeteria style, but it's an actual franchise? And, there's a lot of things to think about. But I think the number one thing with moving on to campus life and going to college is remembering all of those important non-negotiables that you were raised with. Carrying your epinephrine. College campus is real life. You can be exposed to your allergens there. You need to be protecting yourself, asking questions, doing all these right things. So it's really, that's your first big leap into independence, and preparing yourself with research in high school beforehand can go a long way.
Thank you. And I'll add on to that, since you did mention FAIR's college program. We did conduct a webinar that is in our archives back in, I think it was April, with Christy Grimm, who's our college outreach manager. And she had kind of gone through some of the steps of going into college and working with their disabilities and access services offices to make sure that accommodations are in place, and having all the steps that you can kind of take to make sure that heading in that they're thinking about things like living on campus and in the dining halls and things like that. And a lot of times it's very doable, and and we hear from students all the time that are working with their colleges and making accommodations work for them so that they can eat on campus safely. So feel free to check that out, and as Kyle said, our college program on FAIR's website is a good starting place as well for some resources.
Yeah, and I'll just add that in residence life, a lot of people request just have a private room, which a lot of places will allow, and even just to let the floor dawn or whoever's in charge of the floor. Sometimes there's policies where they will make announcements for the whole floor if it's a shared kitchen, and make policies accordingly. So the more people that you let know about your allergies when you're making that transition, the better.
Great. A question came through that sort of inquires about when you had your reaction. I mean, kind of a subjective question, you know, because every individual is going to be a little bit different, but it sort of is related to how could you tell that you needed to use epinephrine when you were having your reaction, and sort of recommendations as far as when you know that you need epinephrine.
Yeah, and for me, and I'll only speak to it from a personal perspective, I am obviously not a doctor, but epinephrine, as we all know, can turn a reaction around, and most importantly, when it's used quickly, you know, upon first signs of anaphylaxis. So when I had my big reaction, I just knew. And I had had minor reactions before, and ones that, as a teen, looking back, I probably should have used epinephrine. And I did some, you know, as I was a teen that should have known better, I did some wait and see approaches, and that did not really help things. And so when I had my biggie reaction, that was the first time it really just went to my throat, to be honest. And it was with right away, just something's wrong, terribly wrong. Something feels weird in my throat. You probably see or have read on these charts of what are the signs and symptoms of anaphylaxis, and you know, obviously always remind yourself of those. But there's one really interesting one, and it's impending sense of doom. And what a weird thing to be included in a list of hives, rashes, shortness of breath, impending sense of doom. And it's true. For me, it was feeling like my whole world was just collapsing. And almost think of, before you make a presentation, those butterflies in your stomach times 100 and horrible. And that's kind of that feeling that something's awful. And if you ever see someone having a reaction, you know, for me, my mind is so inward of what's going on that I'm not making a lot of sense. I'm not communicating well, hence great thing to have a medical ID. And if you see someone and they're saying, I'm feeling symptoms, you know, push them. Ask them, what is it exactly you're feeling? They might be reasoning with themselves, it's not that bad, but you know, epinephrine, first signs of anaphylaxis, it can really make a difference.
Great. That's really important information. I think that, you know, obviously it's fair stance is that it is, when in doubt, use epinephrine. If you think that you've eaten something that may contain your allergen, if you think you might be having a reaction, the side effects of using epinephrine if you don't actually need it, the risks are incredibly minimal, and so the risk of not using it if you might need it is far greater. So I just kind of wanted to plug that, and you know, thank you, Kyle, for sharing your experience about that. Another question came through from somebody that he writes that he has an action plan that he carries in his pocket as far as an emergency care plan, and he has his epinephrine all the time. Is this as good as a medical ID bracelet? I know that you had talked about medical ID bracelets, and I'm wondering if you could maybe kind of speak to that question a little bit.
Well, I love that you have a medical anaphylaxis emergency plan with you at all times. That's really cool. And for me, when I was working in an office, I had my emergency plan right there pinned on my wall so people could see it. But yeah, it's a great thing to have. But the medical ID itself is fantastic in terms of paramedics are trained to look for that specifically. They're looking for a bracelet, they're looking for a necklace, they're looking for some type of ID that will tell them what is going on in an emergency. So if that paper is readily available, great, but those bracelets, those necklaces, they are, you know, pretty discreet in that if you wanted to wear a necklace, it's kind of hidden, but still paramedics, they're going to look there. So I am a big proponent of wearing that, but kudos to you for actually having your plan with you, because that can be very helpful in many situations as well.
Great, and I think we have time for about one more question. So this one is related to dining out, and a couple of teens have kind of inquired about having some being a little bit nervous in terms of expanding their dining out options. They sort of know, specifically with people who have multiple food allergies, it can be very challenging to find dining options. And so any tips in terms of how you sort of expanded your world in terms of places that you could go out to eat?
Yeah, and it's luckily we're in a time, and I'm speaking to the converted here, teens. It is an amazing time for technology where if you want to look up information online, a lot of restaurants are starting to give out more information, allergen menus, allergy info, and there's some really cool apps out there. Allergy Eats is one, Yo Dish is one, I think one's called Can I Eat There, and they give you more information about what ingredients are in their food. I hope someday all restaurants that will just be commonplace, that they will be transparent about what's in their food. But in the meantime, you can look it up in advance, you can call, but ultimately the biggest thing is asking the right questions when you're there, and it's not making too many adventurous choices, but every now and then, if you're feeling comfortable with the waiter or waitress, I'm thinking about this, I'm a little doubtful because I'm allergic to this, would you mind checking? And even if you ask, can I speak to the chef, they'll sometimes make you a special allergen-free version of that menu item. So it takes some confidence to speak and to ask for those type of things, but when you get that meal and it's fantastic and you know that you asked everything right and you can enjoy it without all the worry, that's a great feeling, and that's what dining out's all about, and you can do it.
Great, thank you, Kyle. We've gotten a lot of really, if we didn't get to your questions today, please feel free to send us an email at education@foodallergy.org, and we would be happy to kind of pass along your questions to Kyle and try to, cover any things that we haven't covered, though I think we covered most topics during the presentation and during the Q&A today, so hopefully we got to at least most of your questions out there. We've gotten some very kind comments as well. Kyle, I think that somebody had suggested that you make another video for the high school crowd. So, after you're just coming off your elementary school. But, one parent in particular had said that she really appreciates the guidance that, life is so much more than food, and that it really, that it's worked well, and keeping that perspective has been very beneficial. So spot on as far as that goes. I want to thank Kyle for his time with us today. I should mention that he's currently about 6 hours ahead of us here on the East Coast, and so it's like 11 o'clock at night in his time. So I'll let him get off to bed, but thank you so much, Kyle, for joining us today. Really quickly, our next webinar is going to be in December, and more information on registration for that. What we'll be doing is a research update, as far as things that are happening on the horizon as far as food allergy research is concerned, and that'll be led by FAIR CEO Dr. Jim Baker. So check your emails for more information about that. And if you have questions, again, you can email us, education@foodallergy.org. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you especially to Kyle for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar next month.
Thanks, everyone.